that right.
You got it right. All right. Jeremy, hey, congratulations on your new documentary, Failure to Protect.
Thank you so much, Gig. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's not a problem, not a problem. It's a very interesting documentary because this has been going on, all over the country and for a very long time. But we have to hear it from you first. Is what actually sparked you to do this documentary in the first place?
Yeah, so my mom actually runs one of the oldest child abuse prevention nonprofits in the country called Parents Anonymous. And it's just something I've grown up around with my entire life. The goal of that organization is to help parents and families who get wrapped up in the child welfare system, and it kind of helps them navigate it. Because if you've never had contact with the child welfare system, you really don't know what's coming your way. And one day I was there and kind of doing some videos, and I had parent after parent sit down and sort of tell me their story. How did you lose your kids? How did you get here? And I kind of kept hearing the same story over and over again, the same injustices over and over again. And the faces and names were different, but it was very similar. And obviously, these people were mainly people of color on the lower socioeconomic end of things. And I just walked out that day just really inspired and wanting to tell this story from the parents' perspective, because I felt like the system wasn't giving them a voice. And so I just went on that journey from that day to try to dive into the subject matter.
So, how did you come about finding the perfect subjects for your film?
Well, there's a lot of different ways, I met Rosa, one of the subjects in the film, actually at Parents Anonymous, one of the meetings, and then just reaching out to people, speaking on different forums, going to the juvenile dependency court, speaking to parents outside. And, it took some time, took some trust building. Obviously, this is a scary time for parents. They've lost their kids, they're in the middle of this process, and it takes a lot for them to open up. So it took a lot of legwork and just kind of building trust with these families.
So, what was your process to build trust with these families? Because this is a subject that a lot of people don't want to open up and talk about.
Yeah, well, I think the key with parents is like they feel like no one's listening to them, right? So they're, the social worker isn't listening to them, the judge isn't listening to them. So I come in and I just listen. I just want to hear from them, hear their experiences. And that's a breath of fresh air for a lot of parents where they feel like they have no voice. And I kind of came into it with that open approach of just kind of letting my intentions be known, letting them know what I want the documentary to be about, and I want to tell it from their perspective. And they really responded to that. Um, and I interviewed some parents, and some of them worked out, some of them didn't. And there was a little bit of trial and error in the process. But once I settled on my three families, I was confident that they were diverse enough and unique enough, but also had some similar through lines that kind of connected them. And I felt like it was a good mix to kind of show the audience.
I'm actually surprised because this film, it was a long journey for you because the court system itself takes 18 at least 18 months, and I think
Yeah.
your subjects went all the way up to what, 3 years or something like that, and you followed them this entire time.
Yeah, for the most part, I think most of the families, when I started following them, they had their kids already taken, so it was about 6 months in. But yeah, this process is not quick. They say you can reunify in 6 months, but after speaking with hundreds of families, I've never seen a family reunify that fast, even if the court finds the allegations to be false or untrue. They once you're in the system, they are not going to let you out easy. And so, yeah, you had to have some patience for these court proceedings to play themselves out. But it's a struggle for sure. And I think you touched on it a little bit, but getting access to this courtrooms is incredibly difficult. The juvenile dependency court is a closed courtroom. It's not like civil. It's not like criminal. No journalist, no documentary filmmaker can just walk in there. And so that was a struggle as well, trying to get access to those rooms.
How, how I understand the mental state of the parents through through the subjects through your documentary, but as a documentarian, what was your mental state hearing these stories, and what prevents you from becoming jaded yourself, from all this negativity? Because it almost seems like it's an uphill battle.
No, it's definitely an uphill battle. I mean, one of the characters in the film, her name's Melinda Murphy. She was a social worker, and then she transferred into being a social work investigator for the parents, fighting for parents' rights. And she wrote this book called Culture of Fear that's featured briefly in the film. And she talks about this, something that she dealt with, and a lot of social workers deal with, is called vicarious traumatization. It's like when you're around trauma, what happens a lot is that trauma then gets embedded on you, and then you start feeling the effects of it. And so it's important to separate yourself from your subject matters. You can have empathy for people, but you have to also understand, like, those aren't your problems, and you have to really kind of create that separation. And so that was something I was really conscious of. Obviously it's an emotional time, and I feel for those families, but you kind of have to put some separation there to take care of yourself as well.
So what was it, a struggle for you to separate, or base? I mean, it's just one of those things where, some people could, at the end of the day, they just take a shower and they're done.
Yeah, I know. I'm good at that. I've worked in a lot of different arenas. Right now I'm doing a true crime doc series for Discovery, called Murder in the Heartland. So I've dealt with many difficult subjects in the past. So I'm well aware of trying to separate that and make sure my mental health is taken care of too, because you want to do the best job for these families. And if you're, you know, taking on their burdens, you're going to do a worse job yourself in telling their stories. So it was something I put focus on.
I like your documentary is because of the fact that you try to balance the other side's point of view also into your film. Could you talk about bringing all perspectives into this film, and how you wanted to carefully accomplish that to be fair to everybody?
Yeah, I mean it's a complex system with a lot of different, elements at play. And it was important to hear from the social workers' perspective, from the attorneys, from the judges, from child advocates and civil rights attorneys, et cetera, because nothing's black and white in this system. Nothing's black and white in life, in my opinion. So I really wanted to hear their journeys, especially the social workers, because these people, they're people, right? They're overworked. They have 100 caseloads. They have pressure from their superiors telling them not to put a child back into a home that they feel like is safe. And so one of the most perplexing things I learned in this system was, if a social worker wants to recommend a child to go home, oftentimes their supervisor or their supervisor will tell them no, even if they don't know the case. They'll tell them no. And if you don't abide by that, you'll get taken off the case. So and it all kind of comes down to this sense of liability, right? No one wants a dead child on their hands, right? And so they think the safest way to go is just ripping families apart, which I would disagree with. And I think that the statistics of foster care are clear and very unfortunate, but children that enter the foster care system, though, their outcomes are incredibly low, job wise, going to prison, all the things, and so putting a child back in an imperfect home, it will always be more beneficial to the family. And I think it's important that we help these families, give them the services, give them the support they need while keeping the kid in the home. And there's a big dissidence between what we talk about with what you see with people within the system. They talk about how the system is supposed to work, right? And then there's how the system works.
Hmm.
And so I really wanted to set that up in the film, of establishing how they want it to work, and how it's really affecting real people on an everyday basis.
So you're implying that the system is not it's broken, but not intentionally broken.
Yeah, I think, what is it? The quote is, "The road to hell is paved with good intentions." You know what I mean? I think that quote applies to this system very much so. I think, some children, they do languish in foster care, right? And they can't go home to mom, but the foster care parent isn't really focused on them being really part of their family. And so kids do languish. And so there was a big push actually in 1997 through a bill, the Adoptions and Safe Families Act, that was championed by Hillary Clinton, actually, that wanted to move more kids into adoption because they saw these kids languishing. And that was a good idea. But the issue with that is you're financially incentivizing agencies to adopt kids out. So therefore, now your money coming in is based off of how many kids you have. And so to me, that was a big error. The intention was correct, but the execution of it, I think, is faulty.
Now, I'm actually surprised the subjects that you did interview were the children, and that must have been a really tough task to bring their words and their thoughts into this film, or even to even convince them.
Yeah, I think the kids, they vacillate. They're kids. One day they love mom, the next day they hate mom. But I found it refreshing, especially with Natalie, Rosa's oldest daughter. She was, just incredible to speak with, and she had dealt with a lot in her life, and she was put in a very difficult situation. And as a 17-year-old, I think she handled it really tremendously. And so I wanted to hear from the kids as well, obviously, in this. And some of them I could speak to, some of them I couldn't speak to based off the situations. But yeah, they're the ones that really get hurt the most, and the family system as well, because unfortunately, you go through this traumatic process, right? And then, you get your kids back a year, 2 years, 3 years later, but then you got to deal with all that trauma, because taking away kids, just the act of doing it is really detrimental to their mental health. So, I was happy to do that and speak with the children.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good fresh perspective that a lot of people forget, that the kids have a certain type of voice all of this situation.
Yeah, definitely they do.
Now, and I'm actually curious. Um, a lot of the families and a lot of people that you talk to tend to be from, California, or particularly Southern California. And I noticed it's around the 661 area code. Is it just because you're from Southern California and it was like a convenience for you to?
Yeah, I mean, this was a self-financed documentary, so to travel across the country was a little out of my realm, and so I had to sort of keep it local. But yeah, I mean, that area of the Palmdale kind of Lancaster area is a lower income area, right? And where you have a higher base of Latinos, African Americans, and so they get more affected by the child welfare system. Of course, it's the same thing as the criminal industrial complex. If you're a person of color or a person of lower socioeconomic means, you're more likely to go to prison, just like you are more likely to end up in foster care. It's just the way our country works, unfortunately, and it's common all around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Palmdale, Lancaster, Bakersfield area is a pretty rough cities out there. Even though it's desert agricultural areas. You're absolutely right. Um, yeah, what's up next with you, Jeremy? After this document?
Well, currently I'm co-executive producing a Discovery Channel true crime show called Murder in the Heartland. It focuses on murders that happen in small town America. So I'm actually in Kentucky right now, doing an episode, and looking for the next project as well, and trying to find stories that I think can relate to everyday people. Things that have social impact are the things that I'm most passionate about, and I'd love to do more in that arena.
Absolutely. And let me leave with one last thought. As people have a chance to watch your documentary, Failure to Protect, what is the one most important take you hope they walk away with after watching your film?
I think it's empathy and understanding of people's circumstances. I think we judge parents a lot in this country. I think it's natural, right? However you were raised, you think how everyone else should be raised. And I think it's important to try to take a step back for people and to try to get the audience to empathize with people that are different from them and that were raised differently from them, and understand that parenting and childhood rearing is different, no matter, from all different reasons. And I just want the audience to learn, number one, how the system works, but also to just have empathy for people that are really different from them, and to shed light into different stories.
Well said. Well said. Jeremy, thank you very much for carrying this conversation about your documentary, Failure to Protect. It is a very
Thank
important,
you.
lots to learn, and hopefully we get to do this again.
Okay, have a nice day.